Hello, Internet! Welcome to another Wednesday serial. I just uploaded a video talking about more or less 3 weeks of comics, but going forward, I'm just going to be talking DC, primarily ReBirth. There's one hard exception, though, so let's dig down to it. So right before I left, DC ReBirth was still coming out, Placenta's still fresh, and now we're more into the thick of it, but not even that far yet in my case, especially because I don't have this week's yet. So there's a few probably glaring omissions to some people, but I still have a pile. So I kind of wanted to start going through and talking about it because it didn't shake down anything at all like what I expected. So dug in, and I have Detective 35 here. This is the one they're really pushing, and rightfully so. DC Comics, Detective Comics, yeah, this book should probably be something, right? And, man, I am loving this. This feels like more of the book I've wanted to see. You get a lot of sense of, like, this team around Batman. A lot of the cool characters are there. We have Batwoman, we have Orphan, we have Tim Drake. We have a lot of my favorite Bat-centric characters here. And they're reading and playing like the characters the way more or less I remember them. The whole Red Robin thing's a little weird, but they're working around it, and I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying this book a lot more than I thought I would. It's not actually on my pull. This one is going on the pull. This is probably my favorite of the bunch. And so, but some haven't even come out yet, so that only reads so far. But this has been super great. The whole idea of what they're doing with Clayface is interesting, and this book's working for me. Yeah. Now, Batman proper, one issue in, the cover kind of covers it. There's a big bit with plane crashing, Batman's going to save the day, but he's doing it as a self-sacrificial thing, and at the last minute these super looking folks sweep in and kind of help out, but issue kind of ends there. And we're going to see where that heads. But I don't know. I'm not sold on this book yet. I'm definitely giving it at least one more issue. I mean, this feels like they're not even in the premise of the arc yet. So I want to give it a little more, but if it's going to be that slow, and if this book isn't going to be anything special, I don't think I can be picking up Detective and this if this isn't, knocking out of the park as well. So potentially on the chopping block already. And part of that is because I've been getting a bit of Batman fatigue lately. I've read a lot of Batman in the past few years, and I'm just at the point where I could use a little less. And part of that is, too, if I drop Batman, there's a few other ReBirth books that I've been hearing good things about, and I'd like to try one or two of them, and I could probably only keep going with so many. So I'm really kind of gauging everything right now, and if it's not hitting 10s, even if it's a 9 and not a 10, I'm probably going to want to switch to something else, and especially Batman right now. I just not feeling it as much. But Action Comics has been really pretty cool. It's been an interesting take on Superman, playing with a lot of the mythos, and it's really interesting because I talked about it before I left, but there's a lot of early 2000s stuff, and this comic's hitting a lot of the same notes in a very different way. And it's just interesting to see the Superman mythos played with in such a interesting way with just one new element, and that being that the new 52 Superman has died to Doomsday, but apparently maybe not quite, as it is Superman. He doesn't die well. But I'm digging this. I'm digging this. I'm probably going to keep around, if nothing else, because the way they're playing Lex Luthor right now, in a power suit and everything, and being pompous, but being on the right side of things, more or less. I really like that take, because the whole idea of Lex as a hero and whatnot is great. It's just such a great element to read through with your Superman. I don't know. Green Arrow. I mean, one issue, but really two issues in, and I feel like we already kind of had a bit of an arc. The most negative thing I'll say about this really did feel like what I was sensing with a lot of the ReBirth versus first issue of ReBirth books. That sentence is confusing, that's why I hated it, but like, this is issue 2 of this run of Green Lantern. As I'm sure a lot of things at 1 are issue 2, because there was that one shot before, and they don't, and unlike the Superman or Batman ones, they're not pushing a whole, universe. So, but that's just numbering, right? This has been super interesting so far, and kind of a return to form for Green Arrow, which after the whole freaking werewolf thing and whatnot is drastically needed. And I mean, even for a return to form, this feels different than anything in the new 52, and really is kind of some of the elements we've come to expect from Green Arrow, but a lot of those elements didn't even exist pre-New 52 through a few smatterings of runs they had right there at the end. So, whereas this feels kind of like a returning kind of a classic Green Arrow thing, it's still really actually kind of new. So, it's just this funny way, because of what's happened with Green Arrow over the past few years, that they can do a book like this and it's actually relatively fresh. Yeah. The hardest book for me to swallow right now is Wonder Woman. And it's one issue, and I have to give it at least 2 more issues, because they're kind of doing this weird year 1 bouncing back to Wonder Woman proper. But this Wonder Woman proper is playing a similar game to what George Perez's run was doing when it started and went for a while. And that's setting up Wonder Woman's world. And I mean, so you get the players, but I mean, Etta Candy is a black woman. And that reads like the most bland, like, affirmative action hire ever. Like, it's... Etta Candy being black holds no weight, and I don't know why that is exactly. I think it's because she's always been kind of the larger, kind of put upon woman that's in the background of the Wonder Woman stories, who adds a human element and kind of a B story to spin off to. She's a part of the universe, but she's not, a strong player generally. Even in the George Perez one, when she was a military figure and tied to Steve Trevor. And what's funny is we're getting Steve Trevor here, and he's big white action hero man, but older a bit, at least for the new 52, definitely older, because it looks closer to 52 than 25. And I don't know, that's interesting, I guess, but him as black in Earth 1 was such an interesting read. It kind of like codified this whole fight for equality thing in a way that Etta Candy's black just does not. And that feels so weird, because Wonder Woman's supposed to be central on the female characters. And I know Steve Trevor's definitely a character in there, but I mean, you have to have some male character when you're talking about femininity. You need to have the contrast. And he's definitely that, and he's definitely a male archetype in here, and he damn well should be. But I don't know, it just kind of read in this way that was just kind of like, okay, I guess we're here, but And also, what hit me was the lettering was just huge, and the lines were. It just. This comic read super thin to me. Like, this didn't feel like I was getting as much out of it as other books. And maybe it was just this issue, and I just need to continue on. But if Wonder Woman doesn't get a little more meat on the bones and quick, I don't think I'm going to be able to continue this run. Because I'm just coming off and I'm still reading some of the older Wonder Woman that isn't fair to compare this to, but reading them at the same time, this just isn't worth it, simply put. So, there you are. Then for the hard exception, the Master Race Dark Knight 3. And we get the superhero escalation of Superman's daughter being more of a big old bee. And Batman's involvement in this story is slowly creeping up, but isn't quite there yet. And it still seems like the Atom is one of the biggest characters. And I don't know. I'm curious to see where the story goes, but this issue just felt like pages that need to happen to get from previous points onto the next one. This certainly isn't the strongest installation, but I'm sure it's necessary, and upon reflection, there might have been a little more in here than I'm wrapping my head around at the moment. Maybe not. But these hardcover single issues are still just hilarious to me. What's really funny is this Joker cover. He's not in this issue at all. So the covers feel really mismatched with these hardcovers, which is funny. You think they'd want this thing to maybe, play a little stronger. Also, why they have only black and white on the hardcovers, I wonder if there's something about putting color on these harder covers. But that doesn't make sense, because this is similar to some of the trades Marvel is doing for a while, where they were kind of the quick, dirty hardcovers that didn't have the slipcase or whatever, and those definitely had beautiful colors on there. So, I don't know. Also, there's color on the spine. Yeah. I don't know. I really don't have a lot to say about this book. It's continuing on. I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about when it's all said and done. But these Dark Knight books, any issues singularly on their own don't usually have as much weight until you get to the ending, as, most stories don't. So, yeah, that's my DC bit. I'm really curious to see about Constantine. I'm really curious to continue on with the few, and I'm really curious to see what the Superman book proper is going to be like. There's a few others I'm curious about. I'm really curious about that Nightwing book, but I don't feel like I can pick that up unless I drop Batman. Just too much of the same flavor, So, yeah. I'm kind of curious what you guys would be interested in, especially if you made it this far. Yeah, I do want to talk about manga a bit, because I got to see some stuff even if I didn't get to read it, and there's a lot of stuff I do want to read. And just maybe talk about the Japan trip in general, because I know I'm not a travel vlog guy, but that's because this is one of the few times in my life I have traveled. Yeah, Detroit was a big trip last year, and that was Detroit. Yeah. So, Alonzi, I don't know. Peace.